Humanity often actively denies its reliance on formidable forces entirely outside of its command. Carl Jung famously challenged this denial with his heavily debated theory of the collective unconscious, defining it as a hidden psychological layer generating universal, inherited motifs shared by every person. As detailed in his autobiography, Memories, Dreams, Reflections, the psychoanalyst endured profoundly intense visions from a young age, beginning at 3 years old, when he confronted a monstrous, cyclopean figure seated upon a gilded chair, its single upward-staring eye acting as a ritualistic phallic symbol. The young boy perceived this dreadful subterranean deity as an unspoken, shadowy equivalent to Lord Jesus, experiencing a terrifying epiphany that he had never actively sought out. This chilling encounter plagued his thoughts for many years, acting as his brutal introduction to the darker aspects of existence. He ultimately concluded that psychological completeness demands the acceptance of our flaws, asserting that illumination cannot exist without an accompanying shadow. Following a pattern that defined his entire career, the foundational concept of the collective unconscious crystallized in his mind immediately following a vivid nocturnal vision. Within this slumbering state, he found himself exploring the upper level of an unfamiliar residence that simultaneously felt like his own personal property. While the drawing room boasted exquisite paintings and antique decor, descending the staircase to the main floor revealed a dramatically older environment, dominated by medieval furnishings. Upon discovering and unlocking a massive door on this lower level, he unveiled a rocky staircase plunging directly into a subterranean vault steeped in Roman antiquity. Pulling a metal ring attached to a heavy floor slab, he ventured even deeper into a cramped cavern, littered with skeletal fragments and shattered ceramics, resembling the ruins of a prehistoric civilization. It was only after unearthing 2 human skulls in this primitive darkness that he abruptly regained waking consciousness. The pioneering psychiatrist interpreted this multi-tiered dwelling as a structural metaphor for the human mind, viewing the highest floor as the realm of waking awareness. With each downward step, he plunged further into the enigmatic depths of the psyche, watching the environment grow increasingly ancient and obscure, until he hit the foundational bedrock of the collective unconscious. These descending levels symbolized the cumulative strata of cultural history, representing successive eras of human cognition stacked upon one another. His relentless exploration of the mind spanned more than 60 years, culminating in the expansive 20-volume collection known as the Collected Works. To truly grasp the origins and profound meaning of humanity's shared mental reservoir, he devoted his life to analyzing alchemy, Gnosticism, comparative religion, and ancient mythology. Simultaneously, he observed identical psychological motifs surfacing in the delusions of schizophrenic patients, as well as in the cultural practices of indigenous tribes he visited across the globe. Recognizing that identical mythic narratives echo across completely disconnected civilizations convinced him of a unified internal wellspring shared by all of humanity. This realization cemented his initial theory of a collective layer hidden beneath our individual awareness. As his empirical data grew more robust over time, he definitively categorized these universal patterns as fundamental human instincts, officially naming them archetypes. To fully understand the nature of archetypes, you must first clearly separate this shared mental foundation from your private, personal unconscious. Your individual shadow consists of forgotten or suppressed memories that were once actively perceived, meaning it is entirely shaped by your unique life experiences. Conversely, the contents of the collective unconscious have never been consciously acquired by you or anyone else, existing solely as a biological inheritance, proving that our psychological evolution parallels our physical development. Within your personal sphere lie complexes, a specific term coined by Jung to describe tangled webs of suppressed convictions and emotions that manifest in daily behavior and obstruct mental harmony. He validated this phenomenon using word association experiments in clinical settings, requiring patients to deliver rapid-fire responses to a curated list of prompts. By analyzing subtle delays, verbal stumbles, or sudden emotional shifts, he uncovered the deep-seated, private anxieties that the unconscious mind was actively trying to block from verbal expression. In contrast, the collective domain is populated exclusively by archetypes, which serve as ancient, inherited blueprints of behavior that frequently attach themselves to our personal complexes, such as a mother complex, intertwining with the mother archetype. These primordial symbols embody timeless figures like the trickster or the hero, and core experiences like birth or apocalypse, reflecting essential human realities. Rather than attempting a pointless, exhaustive catalogue of these endlessly mutating forms, he proposed that you will find as many archetypal patterns as there are recurring life situations, all deeply etched into our mental architecture through infinite historical repetition. After spending years observing and exploring the depths of the human psyche, Jung noted the emergence of recurrent, universal forms, noting that the most prominent among these included the shadow, the wise old man, the child, the mother, along with her counterpart, the maiden, and finally, the anima in men and the animus in women. These fundamental patterns spring to life only upon piercing the threshold of our awareness, manifesting as distinct mental pictures or specific actions triggered by our engagement with the external environment. Operating as independent, vibrant entities harbored within our minds, these forces defy our conscious command, instead finding unique manifestations shaped by both the individual and their broader cultural background. The psychoanalyst observed that his theories regarding what he termed archaic remnants, specifically archetypes or primordial images, frequently faced pushback from critics lacking a deep understanding of mythological studies and dream psychology. He clarified a common misconception. People frequently mistake the word archetype for specific, fixed mythological motifs, yet these are simply how the conscious mind interprets them, and such fluctuating depictions cannot be biologically passed down. Rather, the archetype functions as an underlying inclination to construct these thematic portrayals, allowing for significant variations in the specifics while strictly preserving the foundational blueprint. Essentially, these mental structures exist as empty frameworks lacking inherent substance, signifying nothing more than the potential for specific modes of perceiving and reacting to the world around you. Emphasizing a pivotal aspect of his theory, he maintained that a primordial image acquires definitive substance solely upon breaching the threshold of awareness, at which point it becomes populated with the fabric of your conscious encounters. Through the individuation process, the profound journey toward discovering the self, these archetypal forces steer you towards psychological completeness by triggering dormant mental blueprints as you confront uncharted psychological territories, thereby elevating them into waking thought. Throughout his extensive research into the collective unconscious, he uncovered a seemingly ubiquitous emblem of this nature, known as the mandala symbol, dedicating over 10 years to gathering corroborating evidence before ever going public with his findings. Documented across various historical epochs, this archetypal motif of a circle embodies the totality of a person's core being, symbolizing the complete integration of the mental landscape or, framed in a mythological context, the embodiment of the divine within humanity. Through a psychoanalytic lens, the concept of a God image was interpreted as an expression of the mind's deepest foundation, frequently materializing as unified circular icons that illustrate the merging of opposing internal forces. As the ultimate archetype providing direction and purpose, the self requires a harmonious dynamic where your conscious identity and your hidden mental life learn to coexist peacefully and mutually enhance each other. The ultimate, authentic journey left for you to undertake, according to this framework, involves bravely navigating the uncharted waters of your own subconscious terrain. Prior to these groundbreaking insights, psychological disciplines rigidly maintained that the human mind was an exclusively individualized phenomenon, attributing the roots of behavior almost entirely to idiosyncratic personal origins. Nevertheless, the foundation of human behavior relies heavily on universal biological drivers, including the drive for reproduction or the urge for dominance, which extend far beyond mere individual quirks. These represent innate, pre-existing instincts shared by all humanity, constantly striving to fulfill their built-in objectives, regardless of external circumstances. Consequently, your daily actions are profoundly shaped by these primal urges, operating completely independently of any logical reasoning generated by your waking intellect. The contemporary practice of psychotherapy thus bears the responsibility of assisting individuals in bringing these hidden biological forces into the light of awareness. Ultimately, Jung concluded that archetypal structures serve as the unperceived mental reflections of your primal urges, functioning essentially as the fundamental blueprints dictating instinct-driven conduct. Proposing the existence of a shared ancestral reservoir of thought is therefore no more radical a leap than acknowledging the reality of basic biological drives. Despite frequent accusations of mysticism from various critics, this framework of the collective unconscious is rooted not in abstract philosophy or wild conjecture, but in rigorous empirical observation. The central inquiry simply demands whether such unperceived, globally shared mental frameworks truly exist within humanity. Should their existence be confirmed, it inevitably points to a distinct psychological domain, accurately described as the collective unconscious. Furthermore, when you contemplate the immense psychological forces concealed within our mythological traditions and spiritual beliefs, the causal importance of these archetypal structures seems far less like a fantastical invention. Within countless instances of neurotic distress, the root of the psychological turmoil can be traced directly to a distinct lack of harmony between the patient's waking life and these powerful underlying energies. A strictly individualized approach to psychology attempts to dismiss these universal motifs entirely by boiling every symptom down to biographical events, frequently aiming to dismantle these structures through intensely personal psychoanalysis. Such a method was viewed by him as a highly perilous undertaking that completely lacked any valid medical justification. Ultimately, the destiny of entire civilizations represents nothing more than the cumulative effect of internal psychological shifts occurring within countless individuals. Psychological disturbances, therefore, rarely remain isolated private issues. Instead, they morph into broader societal events deeply swayed by these pervasive archetypal patterns. Demonstrating the reality of this shared psychic reservoir relies primarily on the analysis of dreams, which serve as spontaneous, unbidden creations of the deeper mind, untainted by the deliberate intentions of waking thought. While navigating the dreamscape, you might encounter familiar themes, but you may also confront symbols utterly alien to your personal experience that nevertheless operate flawlessly within the dream's logic, mirroring the precise mechanics of an archetype. His expeditions among indigenous African tribes provided profound insights into these nocturnal phenomena, illuminating the critical distinction between what he termed big dreams and little dreams. This categorization hinges entirely on the origin of the vision, differentiating between manifestations welling up from the collective unconscious versus those bubbling up from a strictly personal reservoir of memories. Alternatively, you can directly engage with these primordial forces utilizing active imagination, an intentional practice of focused concentration designed to cultivate a conscious sequence of vivid internal fantasies. Carl Jung observed that when deep-seated unconscious fantasies remain unfulfilled, they provoke more frequent and intensely vivid dream states, whereas bringing these hidden desires into conscious awareness drastically reduces their power and occurrence. This observation led the psychologist to deduce that our nightly visions frequently harbor suppressed imaginations, actively seeking to emerge into waking thought. Ultimately, The bedrock of such nocturnal experiences frequently consists of stifled primal urges, which inherently strive to shape and guide the conscious mind. Through the practice known as active imagination, an individual focuses intently on a deeply meaningful snippet of a daydream or a striking symbol retrieved from a recent night's sleep, allowing the mind to organically weave additional imagery around that focal point. Nevertheless, this therapeutic technique carries inherent risks, as diving too profoundly into these internal landscapes can severely detach a person from the grounding elements of waking reality. When Jung personally engaged with the raw depths of the unconscious, it triggered an intense era of profound personal disorientation and psychological instability. To prevent his profound inner explorations from driving him to madness, he heavily relied on the tangible anchors of his professional duties and family life to keep himself tethered to the physical world. Yet, this very same harrowing period of chasing elusive mental visions proved to be the defining epoch of his existence, eventually supplying the foundational revelations that would guide his life's work. Figures like Philemon, along with other apparitions from my inner explorations, instilled in me the profound realization that the psyche harbors autonomous elements capable of generating their own independent existence without my deliberate input. This particular entity embodied a distinct power completely separate from my own identity. While immersed in these visions, I engaged in profound dialogues where he articulated concepts that I had never consciously formulated, making it undeniably clear that the voice speaking belonged entirely to him. My visionary companion pointed out my flawed assumption that I authored my own ideas, explaining instead that thoughts roam freely like wild creatures in a forest or birds soaring through the sky. He argued that just as you would never claim to have created the strangers you encounter in a crowded room, you cannot claim ownership over the spontaneous ideas that populate your mind. Ultimately, this internal mentor became my guide in understanding psychic objectivity, proving beyond a doubt that the inner world possesses its own undeniable reality. Through these extraordinary interactions, the boundary separating my conscious self from the very objects of my contemplation became sharply defined. Because he challenged my perspectives with such detached objectivity, I finally recognized the presence of an internal force capable of expressing unknown, unintended truths that could even directly oppose my own desires. From a psychological standpoint, this enigmatic mentor symbolized a much higher echelon of wisdom, occasionally appearing so incredibly vivid that he felt indistinguishable from a breathing, living personality. Hopefully, you found this exploration into the depths of active imagination and inner autonomy deeply illuminating. Stay engaged to learn more about the profound mysteries of human psychology and continue exploring the hidden realities of the mind alongside us.